Hi, I'm Christina Hartley. I'm the Executive Director here at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House in Cincinnati, and today we're going to talk about Harriet's family life. So in the Semicolon Club, this reading and writing club that Harriet had joined here in Cincinnati, she also meets Calvin Stowe. Calvin is a professor over at her dad's college. I point that way because the college was located 2 blocks south of us, where Thompson McConnell Cadillac is now. But she also meets Calvin and Calvin's first wife, Eliza. Harriet and Eliza become friends, and then Eliza dies in a cholera epidemic. Cholera is one of those diseases back in the day that people didn't understand, that people didn't know what caused it, and so it killed many people here in the Ohio River Valley throughout the 1830s and 40s. Harriet's friend Eliza dies, and so Harriet's upset. Calvin's upset that his wife is dead. They kind of start hanging out together more and more. 18 months later, Harriet and Calvin get married right here in her father's parlor. And then they move to a house just down the street. So they're still in and out of the family home very frequently. That was in January of 1836. By the summer of that year, Harriet moves back to the family house because Calvin goes on a business trip to Europe and Harriet's pregnant. So she comes back to the family house to stay, which means that she's here when, in the summer of 1836, I know you're going to be shocked, but there were race riots in Cincinnati. And that's because there's this abolitionist newspaper guy named James Birney. He publishes the Philanthropist newspaper, and he gets beaten up and his printing press thrown in the Ohio River. This is when Harriet writes her first political piece of writing. And it's basically the letter to the editor of a different newspaper here in town. So she's watching the riots go on. She's up here on Walnut Hills. She's watching the riots take place downtown, and she writes, it's basically like a short story. 2 guys talking at the dinner table, and she takes on the persona of one of these guys named Franklin. And really the essence of the story is, you know what? People, of course, have their freedom of speech, but if you don't agree with someone, that's no reason to beat them up in the street. And even if you do agree with the people who are doing the beating up, that is no reason to condone that kind of violence. Harriet was kind of ahead of her time in thinking about this, but that's why she writes this political piece while she's here living in her father's house and 6 months pregnant. Which means her first child is also born in the house. Only it's not one, it's twins. And they name the first 2 daughters, Harriet and Eliza, after Calvin's first and second wives. Those are the first of her 7 children. So for the next 10 years, Harriet is very busy, writing, taking care of house, and having more kids. Tragedy strikes again in 1849. This time, it's baby Charlie. Baby Charlie is her 6th child, but the youngest at the time. And because he also dies in a cholera epidemic, he's 18 months old. And because of baby Charlie's death, Harriet says that she can understand how slave mothers feel when their children are taken away from them to be sold. It's not the same situation, but it's analogous in terms of she's never going to see her child again. And she feels very empathetic towards slave mothers because of that experience.